Welcome. Today we will present a new episode of the channel, Misteri, Ombre, and we will talk about an enigmatic story to follow until the end. We will talk about space travels. Even if trained, the fears of an astronaut that something will go wrong during a mission are innumerable. And perhaps first of all is that one of drifting into space and wandering eternally in the void. We imagine this primordial terror applies to modern-day astronauts, but it was even more prevalent among the first cosmonauts, who faced missions in the void of space as real explorers. Heroes in a certain sense, who put their lives at risk, to go beyond the limits of what had never been achieved before by the humans. In the second half of the 20th century, the two main superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, had a long period of tension and hostility between each other that never resulted in a direct military confrontation, and which history remembers as the Cold War. In this context made up of secret agents, espionage and counter-espionage, the race for nuclear weapons and increasingly advanced technological and military projects, the Earth and the sky were not enough to contain this challenge. And between 1957 and 1975, the new front of the Cold War was the space and its exploration. This race saw the Soviet Union in the lead, with the launch of the first satellite into space, the Sputnik 1. After that, living animals were launched. Everyone remember the dog Laika, again launched from the Soviet Union with Sputnik 2. And then it was the time of chimpanzees from the United States, turtles, and so on, up to the first human. On April 12, 1961, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin was the first man to orbit in the space around the Earth. And this proclaimed victory in this race of the superpower of the East over the United States. At least that's the official story. But what would you think if we told you that other men and women before Gagarin traveled in the space? And that these people never went down in history because they died tragically in the first space missions or were lost in the void? Considering the historical context, and the lack of transparency of official information by the United States and the USSR for reasons of political propaganda, it is likely that fatal accidents to the first human missions into the space would have been interpreted as a huge failure by public opinion, a weakness, and such news would have been omitted at all costs. The Soviet Union recognized as victims of its space program only the cosmonauts of missions that took place many years later, in 1967 with the Soyuz 1. And the Soyuz 11 in 1971. But in reality the deaths during the first Soviet Union space missions would be many more. At least another 12, 3 in the first suborbital missions, 7 during the first attempts at orbital flight in the space, and another 2 during the training. Most of these incidents occurred before Yuri Gagarin's proclamation as the first man in the space, and would have been kept as secrets and never officially confirmed by the Kremlin. The brothers Achille and Giovanni Giudica Cordelia, Italian radio amateurs from Turin, which had some expertise, gave force to the thesis of the cosmonauts dead or lost in space. Actually, Giovanni at that time was a phonic and photographic expert, as well as being a scientific popularizer, and Achille a young cardiologist who, following the events of those years, later on specialized in aeronautical and space medicine. On November 28, 1960, almost 5 months before the Gagarin's mission, the Cordelia brothers, listening to the silence of the sky, picked up an SOS in Morse signals coming from a fixed point in space. The signal was progressively weakening, as if the fixed point was moving away from the Earth. A spacecraft that would have come out of Earth's orbit by involuntarily heading into deep space. Cosmonaut Alexis Grakov would have lost his life on this mission. One of the deaths never confirmed by the Soviet Union, and who, according to official sources at that time, did not have available technologies that would allow the space shuttle to exceed Earth's orbit. On February 2, 61, 2 months before the first man in the space, they recorded a heartbeat and labored breathing from space with their equipment. A sound which they interpreted as the rattle of a dying cosmonaut. Sound that was also picked up by other radio amateurs. In this mission, the cosmonaut Gennady Mikhailov would have been the victim. But the Soviet Union declined the incident, and many people tried to discredit the recording, considering it not compatible with the telemetry technology used to monitor the physical conditions of cosmonauts. But the registration done leaves little room for imagination. After this latest alleged incident, the Vostok 1 mission took place on April 12, and the Soviet Union officially reached the space, and Yuri Gagarin became the first man to have traveled into space in Earth's orbit. But a month later, the brothers Achille and Giovanni picked up the most disturbing recording of their radio amateur's career. The last moments in the life of Lyudmila Serekovna, or Tokova, a Soviet cosmonaut woman. If you try to identify yourself in the shoes of this poor cosmonaut, the audio and the sounds recorded on it are very creepy. 2 days after these recordings, the Soviets admitted an accident with Sputnik 7, but claimed that the spacecraft was unmanned and that it burned in the atmosphere on re-entry. But this was not the last of the recordings captured by the Cordelia brothers. Actually, a year later, on May 15, 1962, the voices of 2 men and a woman engaged in a desperate conversation will be intercepted. The Judica Cordelia brothers will continue their passion as radio amateurs, and in the years they will collect many recordings, and among these also the last moments of the life of cosmonaut Komarov in the accident with the Soyuz 1 in 1967. The first official disaster made by the Soviet Union space program. In addition, the Italian radio amateurs, with their work, attracted the attention of the Soviet secret services, which, despite regularly declining any audio evidence of the Cordelia, observed closely their activities. As already said, whether the truth is this, or that official one, what is certain, is that during the Cold War it was not contemplated to formalize failures. And any hero who had sacrificed his life in a failed mission, would never have been known by the history as such. It is said that the pages of history are written by the victors. But between the lines celebrating the victory, there is not always room to mention all those who sacrificed themselves to obtain it. And you, what do you think? Write it down in a comment. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel, Misteri Ombre. Other mysteries are coming soon. Don't forget to share these fascinating stories with friends. See you at the next mystery.